So welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and today we're going to be returning to a map which I have shown once before, and this is a map called GRIMSLADE, which was added I think in September. And I've only shown it once before, but it is a very good map. There's a lot of variation here, and it is more or less a siege, but it sort of falls more into the cityscape category, although for the attackers it is a rather difficult task to actually try and take the settlement, because there is constantly going to be a choke point right to the very end of wherever the defenders decide to fall back to, whether it's up on this hill over here, whether it's towards the back corner over here where there is sort of more of a secondary fortress as well in here, as well as there is another area on the high ground over there. Now, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't slightly concerned, because I think I did have a couple of crashes last time I did this map, because as with most of the newer cityscape maps that have been added ever since 0.97 has become a thing, I think there are a few too many fences for me to be comfortable with this map, to be honest with you, but hopefully we can get through it, because it is 61,000 frames, and to be honest with you, this once again, I've actually had some good luck, and I've been sort of slowly but surely learning to trust the game again after a period of horrendous crashing, but that will all come tumbling right back down again if I have to go through several crashes on a 61,000 frame battle of all things. So let's hope. But I do want to do this replay now, because obviously it is a very large scale one, and it's on a map which is slightly newer, and whoever did make this map clearly put a lot of effort into it. It's not his fault that the fences are always such a problem. But we'll go through the attacking armies first of all, and it is mostly good versus evil. There is one technically evil faction that's on the defence, as well as a couple of elven factions, but to be honest with you, there is a way that you can spin it that the factions on the defence is technically good as well. We have Mighty Mirko, who's going to be playing as Mordor. That's a name that I don't recognise, so we have a newer player here, some Orc fodder. Obviously when a unit is free, you're always going to see a unit of Orc fodder, especially on the attack where you have to economise with your army a little bit more. You may as well bring them, because if nothing else, they're going to be able to absorb some arrow fire for you. Some Orc archers as well, so again the cheaper option, which again I think is actually a wise choice when you're playing as Mordor on the attack, because you're never going to win a skirmish fight even if you do go for the slightly more expensive Moran on archers, so you may as well go for the cheaper option, to be honest with you, and all you really need is something to contest that range fight, not win it. We have some Temple Executioners as well, with the armour upgrade, obviously a fantastic unit of heavy swordsmen, some Troll Drummers, some Olag High as well, so some really heavy Trolls, some Orc Javelins, which are good, obviously they're very cheap, and they can potentially do some decent damage if they don't obviously get engaged in melee or overly saturated with arrow fire. Some Minas Morgul chosen as well, so some heavier spears as well as some Nazgul in and amongst them, so a nice sort of backbone to this Mordor push, as well as some Bulldogs as well, which obviously the Bulldogs, you can see that, I forget the name of this Orc, but it's the lumpy Orc that's sort of in command of the initial waves of the siege of Minas Tirith in the third film. But the Bulldogs are AP as well, as being a General's Bodyguard tier unit, so that's obviously a very nice thing to have. Temple Guard for those armour-piercing arrows, and some Adunheim Lancers, which is an interesting addition to this Mordor force. Perhaps they're hoping to be able to get in and amongst the defences. It's not a bad idea to have a little bit of cavalry when you're on the attack, you just don't need to overly invest in it. And to be fair, Mordor's cavalry is expensive to the point I would suggest someone else have handled that bit. For example, Khand, Y2K86 over here, Khand, have got plenty of budget cavalry options which are pretty decent. Some Variag Bowmen, though, is a good choice because they will be able to skirmish very effectively. They're more expensive than the Orc Archers, but also they're going to be better all around at doing that job. The Nomadic Infantry as well, which are even stronger. They're more along the lines of something like the Bardian Marksman or the Balaketh Marksman, which is pretty esteemed company to be keeping. Decent in melee as well as being very decent at range as well, but not in terms of damage really. They're just designed to be tougher than you would expect. Some Nomadic Light Infantry on the front as well, so Khan don't have any free units like the Orc factions, but the Nomadic Light Infantry are very cheap, but obviously that means their quality is highly suspect as well. Lots of Nurad Footmen, lots of Nurad Halberds, as you would expect. Obviously when Khan can't really spread their wings with a huge cavalry presence on the field, they're going to go for their Nurad units because they're very solid, and the AP is often quite useful as well. Nomadic Axemen, which are a cheap unit of Axemen, but decent base damage, AP as well. Obviously they do fall down when it comes to surviving against arrows, and their melee defense is quite low as well, so they will peter out quite quickly, but they do offer a little bit of a damage spike for a relatively small amount of money. Obviously the much better option when it comes to Khandish Axemen are going to be the Brotherhood of the Axe. They're much more expensive, they're less numerous, but if you can get them into a melee fight, especially against armoured units, they're going to do a lot of damage. Nomadic Marauders back here as well as the Nurad Storm Guard, which again is a given in a siege. Whether you're on the attack or the defence for Khan, the Storm Guard can be such a useful unit to have on your side in a siege. Then we have Rhun, King of Isengard, Artorias. Rhun, of course, a very well balanced faction. Some Eastron clansmen, several units of them with both levels of armour upgrades, which of course makes them substantially tougher than your everyday militia swordsman. Several units of Eastron clansmen, a lot actually, the full complement. There's a huge amount of Scion Room as well as the Dragon's Breath. The Dragon's Breath is obviously overpowered in the current patch. I think there can be little doubt about that. To be honest, I think it's more effective than something like the Witches if you use it correctly. So we'll see if Rhun can do that, because if they do, I really worry for the defenders. Eastron crossmen as well. Crossbows are obviously very useful for the stopping power they offer, but the Eastron crossbows low armour, so we'll see if they can really be effective. Flag Rim back here as well, several units of them. More crossbows, and then way at the back we have a clump of Gamprim as well with their phalanx formation. Then the fourth attacking army, I believe, yes indeed, we have Rhudaur, Unknown Soldier playing as them, some Rhudaur marksmen, a full complement of Rhudaur swordsmen, not too surprising, a good choice in my opinion for this kind of battle. Rhanadign Berserkers and Witchram Enslavers for the quality in the AP, and the rest of the Rhudaur army must be hiding, which I would imagine means Trollshore Axe Throwers, Rhanadign Rangers, and Rhudaur Axeman. We also have some Uruk-hai Reavers over here from Grizzly Fox for Isengard, the final attacking army. Isengard, rather like Rhun, very well balanced, less of an AP focus for Isengard, more of just a defensive focus all round I'd say. Half-Orc Baneguard for some AP however does help. Uruk-hai Archers as well as some Uruk-hai Infantry in there as well, so some nice mix there. The Uruk-hai Crossbows are also going to be very useful, less susceptible to range fire than the Eastron Crossbows I'll be fighting alongside. Some Dunlending Clansmen and another unit of cavalry as well, Champions of the White Hand, maybe a little bit expensive for a battle like this, but if you can get them in and amongst the enemy formations, they can cause havoc because they're going to be so difficult to get rid of once they're there. Now though, moving into the defenders, this sort of narrow canyon that leads up into one avenue of attack that you can go up if you're the attacker is going to be guarded by Captain Gervais, who is going to be playing as Lothlorien. I believe he sent me this battle replay as well. I think it's the same battle that I got sent. I got sent the same battle within 10 minutes of one another, so I just picked the one that I got first. It's sort of, first come, first served, I suppose, but we shall see how well he can do with Lothlorien. Obviously, Lothlorien, a huge archer presence, I imagine. Lorenand archers and March Warns of the Wood going to be very good at mowing down Isengard as they try and come up this very narrow passageway. We have some Elder Council, some Lorenand spears, some Lorenand warriors, and Axeman. So obviously, Lorien's infantry is obviously resilient, especially in melee with their melee defense, as most Elven infantry units are, but also they trade in a little bit of their melee defense next to the other Elven factions for being a little bit more aggressive in melee, so you'd imagine that they can do a little bit more damage, but we shall see. Swordmasters back here as well, some more Axeman, some March Warns of the Wood, some more warriors, some more spears, so mostly heavier units for Lothlorien, which is to be expected in a situation like this. Watchers of the Goldenwood with their Silverthorns, Kindred of Celeborn with their Split Shot, more Swordmasters and Elder Council. Yeah, like the heavier units are obviously going to be used quite liberally here because you're going to need a little bit more holding power against the numbers that are going to be coming at you. Lorenand Archers, Kindred of Celeborn, another unit of Kindred of Celeborn actually, this time the blue capes, which I believe means no armour upgrade, whereas the other ones over there do have it, and the Karas Galadon's Guardians as well, the single strongest pike unit in the game. Then, the player who we're going to be seeing the battle replay from the perspective of is Tommy Wiseau, who's going to be playing as Lindon. We don't get to see Lindon an awful lot these days because they didn't really change an awful lot in 0.97. They kind of had their identity very firmly established in 0.96 and not a lot needed to be done with them, and people like playing as newer stuff. But Lindon is still very effective in the right hands. Warns of Elos Tyrion with obviously Elven Rangers just in general are going to be absolutely brutal because they have even higher damage than normal Rangers at their base, but they still have access to that body piercing. We have some Mithlon Pikemen, which Lindon of course have got a much higher quantity of pikes in their roster than anyone else. It makes them uniquely vulnerable to enemy ranged fire of course, but in melee, Lindon's pikes can be really difficult to break down. Noldorin Guard are a fantastic unit of line infantry as well. We have some Harlinden infantry ready to hold on to the front. Harlinden Guard ready to start immediately peppering Rhun, I'm sure. More Harlinden infantry, more Harlinden Guard, a lot of Harlinden infantry. Rhun will actually struggle here because their AP is going to be of very limited use, albeit these strong clansmen will probably be the first ones in anyway. Noldorin Guard, Mithlon Pikemen, some more Mithlon Swordmasters over here in reserve, and we also have some Noldorin Blade Masters, some 4 Lindon Marines and Mithlon Marines, so all of the Lindon Javelins are waiting back here until the time is right. We have some Mithlon Lancers, 2 units of them actually, which is Javelin Cavalry, so they can be used as Javelins or as aggressive Lancers. We'll see how Tommy decides to use them, and of course the mighty Horse Lords of Ulmo as well. In terms of just outright damage, they could be the most damaging unit of Lance Knights in the game, but obviously they do trade in. They don't have a shield value at all, or they don't have a shield at all. They might have a minor shield value, just to sort of compensate a little bit. But they don't have that, so, you know, and obviously their lower armour as well does mean that they are vulnerable in that respect. And then the final defending arm, we have MSQ2 playing as Umbar, so I guess Umbar have had a change of heart. They've sort of rejoined the fold, as it were, rejoined Gondor. So they'll be taking on the role of men helping the elves defend this settlement today. Trebuchet on the defence, which, with how accurate it is, if the attackers blob up, that could be absolutely lethal. Alcarondas Legion here in force as well, Belagai Pikemen, everything's blobbed up, Balaketh Marksmen, Belagai Archers, Naruna Aru Royal Guard. I think I can see, yes, the Harbingers of Castamere in there as well. Belagai Archers, yeah, they're all in a big blob, but also there's a little detachment of the Umbar force over here as well, which we cannot actually see, but yeah, Warlords of Umbar, and I would imagine it's another unit of cavalry as well, yeah, Dunheim Lancers, but we'll see how useful that is. I mean, to be fair, if Mordor do get caught off guard from that, it could be very lethal, but without further ado, let's begin, and let's hope for no crashes. Need to make some sort of sacrifice to the gods to make that happen in a cityscape battle that was developed for 0.97, I think. You can see here the Dragon's Breath. Be interesting to see how Rhun handle this, because Rhun are right on the doorstep of Lindon's forces here, and I think Lindon, they've got to be in range, right? But maybe they don't want to fire their valuable ammunition into Eastron clansmen that are in loose formation already. That shouldn't be too much of a problem at this range for the elves, to be honest with you, but still, it's the lowest priority target in the Runic army, and with the 2 levels of armour upgrades, they will be a little bit more resilient against that sort of thing, so not falling into that particular trap, it would seem. There's also a unit that I missed actually back here. I was wondering where any of the Runic bodyguard tier units were, and it is going to be the Carmel's Chosen. Nothing too special about the Carmel's Chosen in relation to other units of that type, but they certainly get the job done. Not an awful lot happening at the moment. Maybe there's a little bit of a grace period. Harland Infantry and Mithlon Pikemen moving. Now I would be concerned, do the Dragon's Breath have a shot on them? They kind of do, and if the Dragon's Breath have a shot to make, they will make it. So you definitely don't want to be getting into range of that. I think I will make a cut until the first moves are made here, because I can't help but feel as though it's just sort of ambling along until someone decides to make the first move. Okay, well, things do appear to have gotten underway, at least up here. The Warlords of Umbar have charged down the hill, so Mordor, Mighty Mirko, not really falling for Umbar's tricks, sort of sensing the fact that something inevitably was up here, although it remains to be seen whether he will actually be able to get enough of a force over here to deal with this. I think this is a massive mistake from MSQ2, though. I don't know what on earth he was trying to accomplish there. Although there goes the Mordor General. That's a big deal for the Mordor General. The Warlords of Umbar are going to try and squeeze through, and they will. I mean, to be fair, if the Mighty Mirko was a slightly more experienced player, he would have been able to block off that retreat with the Minas Morgul Chosen. So rather similar to the last battle, where we saw MSQ2 make a very risky move, try and hold on to the bridge choke point in Osgiliath. Once again, it's going to work out for him, but not really because of anything he particularly has done. By all rights, he should have been the one to suffer there, but unfortunately for Mighty Mirko, I don't think he really understands the situation he's in here. Warlords of Umbar are going to be able to defeat a Dunheim Lancers, although having said that, Warlords of Umbar have taken enough losses here that the Mordor Lancers might be able to finish them off, to be honest with you. Biting off more than he can chew there, most certainly. Harland and Guard moving in. So I did hear the unmistakable thud of the Dragon's Breath being deployed. And there is a small patch of corpses, and it's Noldorin Guard as well, so I mean, this is the thing, like, when Rhun are able to bring the cannon, if you have sort of long, narrow sight lines like the ones Lindon are going to have to try and hold on to here, it's always going to be quite difficult for you. Kindred of Celeborn, though, going to be moving into support, so some split shot will always help out, and also, King of Isengard Artorias over here, maybe getting a little bit too comfortable in his position, not sending forward any anti-cavalry units. And immediately the Horse Lords of Ulmo are going to take full advantage of that, doing a lot of damage to that unit of Eastron clansmen. And to be fair, you know, Rhun in general, they have got some Scion Rim, they have got some Gamp Rim, but there's not a huge amount of like disposable anti-cavalry that they could have. And this is the downside of having a sword militia unit instead of a spear one, because if it's spear militia, people will be a lot more reluctant to utilise their cavalry in such a way. Dragon's Breath trying to thread the needle there onto that blob there, but I don't think they're going to be able to get there. I think the house is going to be in the way. But like I was saying, a unit of spear militia makes it so even knights will think twice sometimes about, committing themselves to a fight like that. You can see over here Lothlorien Guard and Mithlond pikemen now. You can see the cavalry coming back once again. They don't really have a good charge though because their own men are in the way. But to be fair, as long as there are no runic archers over here, and there aren't, Rhun have not invested in any archers that I can see. There may be some shadow bows that are hidden, but all they have are crossbows, and if the crossbows get too far into range, they're going to get ripped to pieces by the Lindon and now the Lothlorien skirmishers as well. So interesting to see how that works out. Khand moving in. Umbar over here, MSQ2 has only got a small detachment of soldiers this far forward in the settlement. The rest of them are a little bit further back. Meanwhile, over here you can see the warlords of Umbar. Actually, no, those are... Yes, it is the warlords of Umbar. There's only 4 of them. They've given as good as they've gotten, really, against the Adunime Lancers, but the damage they took trying to pull through the Orc Fodder, the Adunime Lancers, and the Minas Morgul Chosen was fairly telling for the warlords. But having said that, they still have another Adunime Lancer up there on the outer encampment that they can use to their advantage eventually. Meanwhile, Lorien armed archers firing away already, and for the time being it seems as though Grizzly Fox is content to sort of play this skirmish game with Lothlorien, which is a dangerous move to take, to be honest with you. If I were Isengard, I would force Lothlorien to retreat to the top of this hill. They have plenty of infantry that they can utilise up here, of course, but if you force Lothlorien back, force them into defending this area at the base of the hill, you can get some crossbows onto this high ground over here, and all of a sudden the skirmish fight is not looking so good for Lothlorien. And it's good to see that the Uruk-hai are actually going to put pressure onto the Elven skirmishers. The Uruk-hai infantry are going to move forward. The Lorien armed archers only just getting away in time, cutting it quite close there. The March Warns of the Wood are going to shoot as well, but I mean, Uruk-hai infantry with their armour and their shields, it's going to be fairly difficult to kill. They're not even facing them either, so the March Warns of the Wood are going to need to retreat here. He managed to do so well in retreating his Lorien armed archers, but he sort of dropped the ball a little bit there on his March Wardens. Oh dear, don't want to get too close to that because that will almost certainly be a crash, as the split shot arrows shooting right through Artorius' front line. There's Lindon javelins coming in here as well, so a very, very tough position for them to be in. The Eastron crossbowmen are forward now, and to be fair, Artorius is piling forward with quite a lot of pressure. Ooh, one of the Dragon's Breath cannons was destroyed as well, actually, by the trebuchet fire from Umbar. Obviously, you don't have a lot of ammunition in a trebuchet, and you could argue that maybe the trebuchet would be better served breaking up attacking blobs of infantry later on. But I would actually disagree. I think the Dragon's Breath, if you can disable it now, is absolutely something you should do. But Rhun are going all in pretty much here. The Kindred of Celeborn are going to retreat now. They were under crossbow fire and they were the clear target of the Dragon's Breath cannon that is remaining, so it's not too surprising there. But there is one unit of Flagrim, but the rest of this is just Eastron clansmen, and when you're going up against stuff like Lothlorien Guard, Harlindon infantry, there's Mithlond pikemen in there as well, it's going to be very difficult for Rhun here. But there are more elite units coming forward now. Flagrim and Scionrim in greater numbers going to try and force through, but Flagrim are a good unit of line infantry. Usually they're quite efficient as well, but not against Lindon. It's the worst matchup for the Flagrim, really, going up against the Lindon infantry. Meanwhile, over here, the nomadic infantry trying to get into position. I'm a little bit surprised that Y2K86 has sent forward some nomadic infantry this far into the settlement. They can look after themselves in melee, but not against the Dunheim Shield Guard or Alcarondas Legion. And this is also the better foot archer that Khand have available to them, so they threw them into a situation where they're inevitably going to be cut down. You can see here the Dunheim Shield Guard also going to force back that unit of nomadic infantry. Veriag bowmen firing away as well. In come the nomadic light infantry. They won't be able to do too much against the Umbar heavy spearmen, not at all. Alcarondas Legion, however, this is really the worst situation for the nomadic infantry to be in. In melee, they're being faced with a unit which is by far their superior, and they're getting shot in the back by Belagire archers using flaming shot. Not good for them at all. Having said that, Alcarondas Legion getting a little bit surrounded, but the nomadic light infantry is very unlikely to be able to do much in this situation, surrounded as they are by Umbar heavy infantry. But the Adunheim Shield Guard would be exposing their backs to all the Veriag bowmen over there, so I mean, it's not the worst situation to be in, to be honest with you, for Khand. They can make this work for them, but it'll be interesting to see who gets the better of that engagement, because it's only a small scale one, but it could have a bearing on who gains the initiative over on that side of the river that is cutting through the settlement. Over here, meanwhile, Mithlond Lancers utilising their javelins. You can see here the fate of the Eastron crossbowmen. Absolutely worth going after with the defending skirmishers. Like, you won't end up with a huge amount of kills come the end of the battle on your archers if you go after a unit like this, but you do take away one of the attacker's best tools. Another... That was a bit of friendly fire there as well, though, to be honest with you. I mean, it's worthwhile, I suppose, but considering the damage Rhun have already taken, a full-blooded advance here by Rhun, but I think Lindon are going to have what it takes to stop them dead in their tracks. Meanwhile, over here, Rhudaur coming to the aid of Isengard as they continue to move forward. Lothlorien warriors move forward to bail out the Marchwarns of the Wood, who lingered in melee, maybe a little bit too long for my liking, but Lothlorien warriors are going to be a good choice up against Uruk-hai infantry, but it's a matter of numbers here, with the Dunman spearmen forcing their way through the Lothlorien warriors and sort of prizing apart their formation. That's going to give the stronger Uruk-hai infantry all they need with their superior numbers to start isolating the individual elven warriors and slaying them. There are poison arrows being deployed in there as well, but I mean, they're doing a lot of damage to the Dunman spears, but that's not exactly the most high profile target really, which is exactly why they've been utilised in the way that they have. Meanwhile, over here, these Lothlorien archers getting into a good position as well. I imagine that the kill count is really starting to pile up for the Lothlorien archers just in general. Kindred of Celeborn over on this side as well, and this is the issue that Rhun have here. They've committed so much that of course they're going to attract the attention of more than just Lindon, and Lothlorien has obliged by sending some much needed reinforcements, although this is a relatively thin Lindon front line at this point. Lindon needs to send forward some reinforcements. They can't afford to skimp here because, you know, if Rhun do start to pour in, they don't have a huge amount left. There are some shadow bows moving in as well. They will need some help from Rhudaur, I think, to really consolidate any gains they make. Lindon could be in trouble here though. Karen Amroth Rangers are shooting, which is not good news for Rhun either. Just like the Wardens of Lothlorien, 6 missile damage on Rangers is nasty. They're also strong in melee because they pull out a two-handed sword. Makes them even better than the Wardens of Lothlorien, really. Over here, meanwhile, Nomadic Axemen charging in, doing more damage to this unit of Alcaron Last Legion. There's already a lot of dead Nomadic Light Infantry. In comes the Nomadic Marauders from Y2K. So Khan so far certainly taking point over on this side of the settlement. But the Belagair archers up on that cliff over there, and the archers further back into the interior of the settlement. More Belagair archers over here, and it's very difficult to sort of get into a comfortable skirmish fight with Umbar, because, you know, all of their archers are very good at this sort of thing. To be fair, so are Khan's, but Umbar, you know, this sort of defence is where they can certainly be feeling a little bit more comfortable, especially considering the amount of Nomadic Axemen Khan have. Like, they're very easy pickings for even a basic unit of archers like Belagair archers. Worth keeping an eye on. Speaking of something that's worth keeping an eye on, more Umbar, I should say, deploying their own Adunheim Lancers now as well. They're going to move across. I think there is actually still a blue triangle over here, which would suggest, hidden in these trees somewhere, there's still like a single warlord. Maybe going to group up and then start to put some pressure on the backlines here of Mordor and Khan. Easier said than done with just a single unit of full strength Lancers now. Even more Nomadic Axemen starting to fall away. Rhun going all in. There is now some Rhudaur reinforcements sort of getting into positions. Some Carmel's shadow bows starting to have an impact, but yeah, I mean, over here you can see that Rhun, they are starting to make gaps, and they are starting to engage Lothlorien archers being engaged by Flagrim and Scionrim. I think the unfortunate thing for Artorius is he's going to need more from Rhudaur if he's going to consolidate these gains, because Rhun, once again, as in every battle of the last 3 sieges we've seen, Rhun have been the ones to sort of take the initiative and go in early, which is bold and a necessary thing for the attackers to do, but obviously for the army that does that, they're going to take catastrophic losses, as can be seen by the numerous golem corpses that are strewn in this choke point. But the opportunity is here now. Lindon's line is looking a little bit dicey, a little bit ropey. If Rhudaur really want to, they can send forward some swordsmen, some Dunman spearmen, like not the strongest units certainly, but just pouring into the gap that Rhun has made, because they need to do this. They need to make Rhun's sacrifice worthwhile. But unfortunately for them, I don't think they're going to do that. I think what Rhudaur was hoping for was to follow Isengard in instead, which unfortunately I think plays into the hands of the defenders here, because it's a narrower choke point. Forward comes some Rhudaur swordsmen now as well. Poison arrows thudding into the Dunlanders and the men of Rhudaur. I mean, Rhudaur swordsmen and Dunlending clansmen are not going to have what it takes to break down a shield wall of Loren-armed axemen and Loren-armed spearmen. We shall see what transpires there. Nomadic infantry moving back into position. You can see here some nomadic axemen charging forward. Looks like the Belagair archers out of ammunition, but I'm certain that they've loaded up on some decent kills already, shooting into nomadic axemen and light infantry and standard nomadic infantry as well. And with their numbers they'll be able to finish off the nomadic axemen that are over here. Charging forward are the Mithlond lancers. I think they are out of ammunition. We saw the Lindon cavalry utilising their javelins over on the other side against Rhun, and now they're being sent over here. Of course, the Lindon forces, they may be shielded, but their light armour is going to be a problem if they continue to take arrow fire to the extent that they just did. But they almost completely destroyed that unit of weakened nomadic infantry. So a good use of the cavalry there, but several of... well, actually, no, not... I don't think many of the Lindon riders at all fell there, only a couple at most. So a successful expedition there for the Lindon cavalry, and there go the nomadic axemen. Broken, and they are going to run. The announcer still fancies the chance of the attackers though, which in a 5v3 is not terribly surprising. Rhudaur clansmen now moving in, so Rhudaur are committing what they had over here to support Rhun to go in now, but more is needed. Like, single units of clansmen not really going to be what is required here. Dunman spearmen are over here. Rhudaur swordsmen trying to get into position. They're trying to chase down the Kindred of Celeborn. I mean, the Kindred of Celeborn have certainly already filled their boots with regards to kills, and this is the armour upgraded variant as well. There may only be 29 of them. It'd be interesting to see if they can cut their way through all of these Rhudaur swordsmen, but yeah, with arrow support from the other side of the street, they absolutely will be. Again though, Scion Rim proving themselves to be a real rock in the heart of a runic army composition, because they're still here fighting hard. Very, very resilient. Heavier armour than the other local units. They don't have AP, and they're certainly not as good at killing things, being the spearmen that they are, killing infantry anyway. But their presence as a sort of the heart and soul of a runic push like that is certainly required. But Rhun here, on their last legs, the Carmel shadow bows ripped asunder. I would assume that was probably by the Cairn Amroth Rangers or any other sort of archer that was on the defence. As soon as they come forward, you're obviously going to start to take heavy notice of Rangers. Eastron crossbowmen firing their missiles. Bolts coming in. Loren-armed archers also still firing away. Lindon's infantry was certainly pushed to the limit by Rhun there, and considering it's a rather poor matchup for Rhun, that does say a lot about how Rhun can perform. But to be fair, also Rhun committed everything forward, which I don't think Lindon were fully prepared for, so that probably goes some way to explaining why Rhun weren't ripped to pieces to the extent that maybe you thought they would be. Meanwhile, again, over here it's a matter of sort of saturating the line with numbers for Rhudaur and Isengard as they come crashing in to the Lorien front line. This is much more like it, like single units of swordsmen and Dunlending clansmen wouldn't have been enough to break this Lothlorien front line, but much how Rhun were trying to break through Lindon over on the other side. You can see here they're going to try and do the same over here, albeit with two armies, which should yield better results. And there goes the Runic General, which is probably the death knell for their forces, to be honest with you. You can see here they are starting to filter through this front line now, some Rhudaur swordsmen finding their way through the gaps. Victory is looking ever more likely. Elder Council firing their javelins, Loren-armed archers firing their arrows as well. More infantry reinforcements on the way across, another unit of Loren-armed warriors, Loren-armed swordmasters as well, but will Lothlorien truly have what it takes to hold on here? I mean, Rhudaur have certainly done a good job at using their spears to just sort of push through the lines and make life difficult for the elves to remain set. And the Rhudaur clansmen filtering their way through. Of course, they will die as they do this, but they will make life very difficult for the elves to sort of maintain a cohesive front line. And that could be absolutely vital as this battle wears on. Nomadic infantry starting to trudge their way forwards. Belagair archers as well. Mithlond lancers thinking about moving forward, but thus far, Khand and Mordor have adopted certainly more of a cautious approach than Rhun did on the other side of the river. But also Isengard and Rhudaur are being a little bit more aggressive. Horse Swords of Ulmo are over there, as well as the three warlords. Don't know how much of Rhun truly remains. Not much. They are still fighting, but fighting to the death. Scion Rim, Flag Rim. The Noldorin Blade Masters were over here as well. Such a devastating unit of heavy swordsmen then. Doing the business. Let's see here. Kindred of Caliborn, still 20 of them remaining as well. Looks like they still have some ammunition, but yeah, Lance Knights are over here. You can see there a lot of red triangles as Rhun and their surviving men flee for the hills. There's still some Isengard forces here at the base of the hill, and the Champions of the White Hand, but the rest of the Rhudaur army, I have to say, has been aggressively pushed up this pathway. I think the attackers need something to happen over here. I mean, no, the announcer is still fancying the chances of the attackers, and so far so would I. Ettenmore's Troll Hunters moving in. I would hope that they've used up at least some of their ammunition before being used as heavy spearmen, but certainly Rhudaur pushing forward very aggressively, and here the elves are sort of trying to paper over the cracks a little bit here, because I don't think they have enough infantry over here. I mean, they've certainly done a lot of damage with their missiles and their javelins, but there's still more where that came from, and there's also return javelin fire from the Snaga skirmishers of Isengard over there. You can see the Lorien Axemen. Over here the attackers are looking a little bit thin on the ground, but that's not going to last long. The Witch Realm Enslavers are coming in. The strongest infantry unit Rhudaur has to offer, and they're going to come in with their big AP damage, which is going to be useful against the heavier Lothlorien units in particular. Berserkers over there. Man, the announcer really loves the sound of his own voice. I think I know his opinion at this point. You can shut the hell up now. The rest of the Lindon forces that were victorious against Rhun over here are now going to move over to try and support Lothlorien. Of course, this does mean that this side of the river is relatively open at this stage. I mean, the attackers that are over on that side of the river could choose to cross and try and take advantage of that. Obviously, that will be very noticeable when or if they do that. But we shall see. Balaketh Marksmen up here. They have the armour upgrade as well, so a very, very strong archer when it comes to skirmishing with others. They've got plenty of choice to aim at here between the Khandish and Mordor armies. Very difficult to try and stop them as well. It really takes... If you're going to skirmish with a unit like this and kill them quickly, you need to do it with like crossbows or something. Because they're so... their armour is so good when you upgrade it. They have that shield value. And they have slightly stronger missile damage as well than something like the Belagyr archers, so they're capable of doing more damage in return as well. But you can see, much more of a concerted effort to try and gain entry into the settlement over here now from Khand as the Nurad footmen start leading the way. The Umbar trebuchet starting to do some damage, obviously as a Numenor, as a descendant of Numenor faction. Umbar have got that trebuchet, which makes them a completely unique entity amongst the evil factions technically. Although I suppose they're not evil in this scenario. They've decided to go back to their old Numenorian roots, try and recapture that old glory instead of wallowing as filthy corsairs and pirates. Nurad footmen. I mean, this is an interesting fight. I mean, if enough footmen get committed forwards, this should be a good fight for Khan, because that AP will help them against the Alcarondas Legion, but not if you just send forward one unit at a time. Something else the Nurad footmen have in their favour, of course, are those big shields, those big rectangular shields, which will certainly help them weather any arrow storm that Umbar wishes to lay on for them. More support is going to be needed though. I'm actually a little bit surprised that Mordor is not committing forward a few more units just yet. What have we got going on over here? Warlords of Umbar sneaking their way in. These Umbar riders going to try and find their way into these archers, I would imagine, or maybe even the javelins. But certainly trying to take away... every kill will help. You never know how close the battle is going to be come the end of it. I mean, I highly doubt that a charge like that, killing off like 5 archers or so, is going to be like the thing that determines the battle, but it can certainly have a bit of a snowball effect as you go on. Adunheim Shadowbows using their body-piercing arrows, which will work. They may not have the highest base damage, but just the fact you're hitting multiple units at once, increases your chance at a kill. But still, I mean, this is ranger ammunition that you're using on Balaketh Marksmen over here, so Umbar, even though they will lose this skirmish right now, they'll probably take that. Meanwhile, over here, yeah, you can see that overwhelming force has yielded the results they wanted, albeit Rhudaur's army is looking very battered and bruised at this point, but they've got what they wanted. They have pushed the elves back, and they're going to continue to retreat here, the elves. They're going to sort of do a staggered retreat where individual archers fire, trying to do as much damage to Rhudaur on the advance as they can, which is definitely worthwhile. Rhudaur's armour is not up to much, especially if you can start targeting down some of their stronger units like their Hranonine Berserkers or their Witch Realm Enslavers. That would be very, very good indeed. Keren Amroth Rangers. I mean, the elves do need to be a little bit careful here. They do need to set up more of a cohesive front line than they've currently managed. if they want to stop the momentum. I mean, Rhudaur is continuing to push forward. Isengard is, of course, going to send the rest of their army up this hill now as well. They're just lucky the champions of the White Hand weren't on hand to really take advantage of that right from the off. Do the elves, after a really aggressive push from Rhun, have what it takes to stand up to this Rhudaur-Isengard advance? So far, they've kind of managed it. They've had to pull back, but I don't know. We shall see. Over on the other side, Umbar, of course, still have much more of their manpower left available to them. Belagair archers and a Dunaim shield guard blocking the continued advance of Khand and Mordor. Minas Morgul chosen with Variag bowmen. With the addition of the Brotherhood of the Sword, and certainly with the axe and the Olag Hai, this pocket of Umbar resistance is going to be easily dealt with. But you can see over here that Umbar have sort of entrapped a bunch of these Khandish warriors within the settlement, and if they can finish them off quickly, that will certainly be a good thing to do. I mean, Belagair archers won't be able to defeat Nurad footmen, but that was mainly, yeah, it was directly into the centre mass of the Minas Morgul chosen, and they're not an easy unit to break, to be fair. Among Mordor's roster, they are certainly one of the units with higher morale, so to break them, obviously hitting centre mass with a trebuchet could be pretty devastating. Nomadic marauders utilising their javelins, throwing into the centre mass of the Alcarondas Legion, but these Khandish units that have penetrated deep into the settlement are going to be finished off, I think, by the Umbar heavy infantry, but Umbar are going to be made to bleed for this advance. Those individual pockets that have been left behind are going to fall ultimately, and I don't think they're going to get enough kills to really make their sacrifice worthwhile, so Umbar may be suffering the same sort of fate that Lothlorien did during the Rhudaur Isengard push, and I think this does go to show that numbers do make a huge difference, of course, because Khand and Mordor have been supporting one another. As soon as they've done that, the Umbar defence started to falter. Rhudaur and Isengard did, the Lothlorien defence struggled, whereas in the middle, Rhun didn't really have anyone supporting them, and as a result, the defence remained relatively solid. Even then, Rhun didn't do a terrible job. Trollshaw axe throwers doing their thing. Trollshaw axe throwers are going to be fantastic, to be honest, against the certainly against Lindon. A very, very useful unit to have as Rhudaur. Their base damage is going to be really, really useful. I mean, there are some Galathra and Blade Masters in here as well who will also be fantastic targets for the Trollshaw axe throwers to try and take advantage of. Mithlond Lancers trying to get in position. They are throwing. Or was that the Elder Council? Kind of hard to tell. Warns of Alos Tyrion. This is the new front line that the Elves have set up, but once again, I just don't think it's going to be able to withstand. And I think this push from Rhudaur and Isengard will continue. It has been successful thus far, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. The Uruk-hai infantry starting to push through the lines as well. Victory seems certain. Only a fool could lose this battle. Elder Council still over there. What have we got here? Wardens of Alos Tyrion. They've got their blades out, which suggests they don't have any ammunition left, which, if that's the case, I mean, if they're going to try and save this front line, they're going to need their presence there. Again, they're pulling off Lothlorien swordmasts. I think they see at this point the danger they're in, but they've got Noldorin blade masts on the front line. They kind of need to continue to try and hold on at this point with how much they've invested. In comes some Elder Council as well. With these reinforcements, they should be okay to hold on for a little bit longer, but I just feel as though if Isengard and Rhudaur really wanted to, they could push forward even more numbers and lay this defence low. We shall see. Meanwhile, over here, Khand continuing to push forward. Nomadic Marauders and Nurad footmen fighting side by side. Reinforcements are on the way after the remainder of the Umbar force, at least the majority. Those Balaketh marksmen that are up on the cliff have also been dealt with at this point. Alcarondas Legion going to push forward alongside another unit of Balaketh marksmen to try and hold on. Hold the riverbank a little bit more effectively. Still more arrows whizzing through the air. Naruna Aru Royal Guard. Very, very strong unit of archers in a skirmish fight as well. Even better than the Balaketh marksmen. They've got even better armour. They're very expensive though, of course. Lindon Cavalry, the Horse Swords of Ulmo. I mean, once again, Khand don't really have the cover to protect their archers against the Horse Swords of Ulmo here. And with these charges, they could do yet more vital damage as Khand try to consolidate their gains. Fire's starting to rise from some of these houses, collateral from the trebuchet, I'm sure. A single unit of Alcarondas Legion is not going to be enough to stop this Mordor push over here, though. Olag High at its heart, Orc Fodder as a meat shield, and then Minas Morgul chosen to consolidate any gains made. Yeah, one unit of heavy infantry is not going to be enough to stop a push like this. Balakith marksmen, I think, sensing that, are going to try and retreat, and I think the time might have come for Umbar to retreat entirely, to be honest with you. There's simply too much surface area for them to cover here as Khand and Mordor continue to push. What have we got going on over here? Walk skirmishers and champions of the White Hand getting ready to swing around over here.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Quite. With that cavalry though, like, can the elves really stop that? I think they're sort of preparing, I think, to try and retreat to that that hill there in the middle. I mean, that would kind of work. They're certainly going to make Isengard and Rhudaur bleed a little bit more, but with units like Nazkai arriving on the front line, that's not going to last too much longer. So once again, this joint Rhudaur-Isengard push has been very, very good, I have to say. They certainly knew when to push forward in numbers to mitigate the devastating effects of the Lindon Javelins and the Lothlorien Archers. Mithlon Lancers, yeah, I would agree. I think the attackers, they're in a pretty good position here at this point to go on and claim the rest of the fight. There's still a long way to go yet, though. And considering the fight that's been happening so far, that does surprise me a little bit. Horse Swords of Ulmo going to charge forward once again, and again, the Variag Bowmen are completely open here. They're going to receive some covering fire from the Umbar skirmishers in behind them as well. Lancers down, and once again, that's going to be a nice charge there into the Variag Bowmen. Any kills they can get at this point, the defenders are going to be necessary. They just need to try and cut down on the attacking manpower, if nothing else. Naru and Aru Rural Guard continuing to fire. Minas Morgul chosen, continuing to push through. That rear guard from the Alcarondas Legion is certainly not going to last much longer. But they will stand and fight. That is the good thing about Umbar. A lot of your units are made of pretty stern stuff. There goes Kirdar, the bearded elf. Doesn't look much like he was captured, just looked more like he was shanked by a scimitar. But there you go. Still, I mean, Khand are not learning their lesson here. These Variag Bowmen are just free kills for the Horse Lords of Ulmo at this stage. Now, however, we can see that the Adunheim Lancers are going to be activated as well, so Umbar seeing the opportunity to move forward and take advantage of the much more exposed backlines now. I mean, having said that though, a lot of the backlines seem to still be made up of these Nurad Halberds, so I mean, they might be able to catch up to these Orc Javelins, I suppose, but I mean, Khand, they have turned their units around, so they've almost certainly noticed the Adunheim Lancers at this point. But still, cavalry has been a useful tool, especially over here against Khand and Mordor. Halberds down, and yeah, MSQ2 at this point realises that the game is up. Trebuchet crew being sent in and immediately being destroyed. Temple Guard are over here as well. That is something else worth mentioning as well. Like Temple Executioners, Temple Guard, the Nazgul, I would imagine, are still living large somewhere. They might be embedded in another unit somewhere. It's very difficult to keep track of a unit that small. Orc Archers moving in, pulling out their hand axes, following the Nurad Storm Guard. Trebuchet crew, of course, easily being dealt with, but this does give Umbar the opportunity they were waiting for. The Horse Swords of Ulmo being caught up by the Olag High. They need to retreat, so yeah, Umbar going to need to retreat, and I think that is going to be what happens here. You can see Umbar, a lot of their forces consolidated in this little makeshift fortress here at the back. Lothlorien also doing the same, so I think seeing the situation they're in, I certainly don't blame them for preparing their retreat in this manner. Karen Amroth Rangers being caught up to by the champions of the White Hand as well. Brutal. Easy kills for these mounted Nazkai as they were. And moving back over to here as well, you can see Rhudaur continuing to push forward. Isengard going to be following them down as well. So Isengard and Rhudaur will be able to link up with Mordor and Khand and they will be able to move to the furthest reaches of the settlement back here. The best place for a final stand, to be honest with you, because it is, you know, a very lethal choke point, and it is the defenders' best hope of pulling a victory out here. Watchers of the Golden Wood doing some damage with their silver thorns to the Warg skirmishers of all things as well. They're not brilliant under arrow fire, but maybe an opportunity to try and charge into them, although maybe not. The Karas Gladon's Guardians are there, and that's not what the Wargs want to be trying to deal with at all. They're going to use their javelins though, that's the thing. Like, you need to turn around at this point and try and deal with this, because you can't afford to lose Karas Gladon's Guardians at the hands of Warg skirmishers. I think they're going to get shot point blank though by Silverthorn arrows, which will certainly take an impact on skirmishers like this. They're going to try and charge in. Honestly, if I were the Watchers of the Goldenwood though, I would just sort of maintain, because that wasn't a very good charge at all, and the Watchers of the Goldenwood will easily be able to deal with the Warg skirmishers in melee with those two-handed elven blades of theirs. Khand and Mordor going to reform, as will, I'm sure, Frodrum javelins. Throwing their payload, I think they're trying to throw it at the Horse Lords of Ulmo, who are going to move in. There's a single Etten Troll Hunter. Warg skirmishers are going to get in here. The Horse Lords of Ulmo getting deep into things here, but not sure. I think they may have bitten off more than they can chew there, and this will probably be the end of the Lindon Knights, but at the very least it's made life a little bit more awkward. And the Watchers of the Goldenwood are still here. Oh, excuse me. And they are going to reload. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, streaming in at this point. Silverthorn arrows. Certainly the worst nightmare of Wargs, and to be honest, Rhudaur as a whole. Oof. Witch Realm Enslaver's taking a bunch there, and I think collateral damage. This one brave troll hunter caught a few of those arrows right in the face. All sorts of Ulmo of the Warg skirmishers just sort of angrily staring one another down at this point. Very interesting. With those Silverthorns moving in, Rhudaur and Khand continuing. I mean, this really is the only units doing any sort of damage at this point from either side. The Watchers of the Goldenwood having a grand old time shooting the attackers as they move forwards. A few of those arrows going astray there, but now they're going to try and retreat as the Warg skirmishers move in. Balaketh marksmen that are up on the higher ground will be able to cover their retreat. Warg skirmishers getting caught up on the Horse Lords of Ulmo once again. Warg skirmishers are anti-cavalry in melee, I believe, but the Horse Lords of Ulmo are not just any old cavalry unit, and indeed the Warg skirmishers end up routing. Interesting to see the Nurad Stormguard being the ones that are being sent forward first. I mean, bodyguard tier units, so armour, shields on the back as well to give them a minor shield value, multiple HP, all decent things. We don't really want to be sending them in just to get shot, surely. Variag bowmen setting up in position as well. There aren't many of them left after their bruising encounters with the Horse Lords of Ulmo, but they should still be able to do a bit of damage nonetheless. Kindred of Celeborn. Still more split shots, obviously the benefits of having two of such a unit. The Horse Lords of Ulmo finally being brought down by Rhudaur marksmen of all things. Not exactly melee powerhouses, but the Horse Lords of Ulmo have been doing an awful lot. There's only one of them left at this point. I mean, this is the sort of encounter where you'd imagine actually this one knight could probably kill off all 35 Rhudaur marksmen. I'm surprised that two of them actually died in that situation. Nurad Stormguard. A lot of split shot arrows raining down from on high, but not exactly the most accurate. Maybe a bit of a waste here. Moving forward, I mean, I would imagine this is going to be a long, torturous, drawn-out process of the attackers deciding how they want to try and tackle this final stand. Because there's a lot of frames left, and I'd imagine that comes down to the fact that they want to skirmish for as long as possible here, the attackers, to try and whittle them down as much as they're possibly able. MSQ2 has got enough as well. I mean, they've still got Harbingers, they've still got the Umbar high tier pikes, I believe, as well. They've certainly got Belagard pikemen. Yeah, they've got the Naran Sentinels in there as well, so between them and the Karas Gladhon's Guardians, they've got enough pikes to hold on to a choke point indefinitely, really. It's going to take a push, I think. But with units like Trolls, they should be able to manage it. They've got enough spears that they can just slap them into shield wall and try and pull through the lines. They've got javelins as well, so a dense block is maybe not going to be the best thing in the world. Orc archers moving forward. Rhudaur marksmen. I mean, they are in a very tightly packed formation here, so even all of these basic archers will be able to score plenty of hits. Slowly but surely trying to wear down the defenders in their final fortifications. Very bowman getting his position. I mean, those are split shot arrows, and of course they'll be able to mow through basic orc archers like this, but they've only got so much ammunition, and to be fair, a unit like Rhudaur marksmen, of course, their unique selling point, as I'm sure you can see from all their quivers, is the fact that they've got so much ammunition. So, yeah. More orc archers on the way forward, so that's the thing about Mordor as well. You've always got more manpower available to be mustered forward. Adunheim shadow bows moving in, although it looks like they're out of ammunition. A decision to utilise their ammo earlier on may come back to haunt them, we shall see. Dunlending clansmen. Yeah, not really much is going to happen there, I don't think. Still a continuing skirmish. But honestly, I think what I'm going to do here, considering that the die has somewhat been cast by the attackers here, I'm going to make a little bit of a cut. Because it is going to be just sort of trading blows with arrows for the time being, certainly. I'll make a cut and I'll rejoin when the attackers are sort of attacking with their infantry into the choke points. I don't think they're going to do that with a single unit of Dunlending clansmen. They might, and it might be a very short cut indeed, but like I said, like this is what the fight is going to be for a little while longer yet, I would imagine. And it's just going to come down to the attackers exhausting their arrow supply before moving in, which is all well and good, but it's not the sort of thing that I can make interesting with commentary, to be honest with you. It's sort of, this is the dull part of a siege before the genuine assault. So I'll make a cut and we'll rejoin when the attackers are sort of attacking through these narrow archways. Well, they certainly took their sweet time getting to any sort of melee engagement there, the attackers. It was more or less 15,000 frames of just sort of shuffling around, occasionally shooting one another with archers, so yeah, there's no way I could have made that entertaining, no matter what I did. But the orc archers are now moving in now. Orc archers in melee, of course, are going to be no match for Lothlorien swordmasters or even Balaketh marksmen, to be honest with you. It'll be a relatively easy task for units like this to be able to gain the upper hand on the orc archers. But I mean, there's not a huge amount of infantry power left in here. There are Corsair crossbows, which revealed themselves from being hidden as well, which obviously is a significant development. The stopping power of crossbows could really make a big difference here. Having said that, it is still going to be quite difficult. Now, going in here does worry me a little bit. Some sort of screenshot involving that weapon rack back there, I think, is going to be the thumbnail here. But it is still going to be a long process for the attackers to try and get in here and grind the defenders down. You can see over here, though, that still these Adunheim Lancers could be a factor. And these Rhudaur marksmen, they're completely open. There's no anti-cavalry units nearby. The Nurad Halberds are going to try and get in there now. Now, the problem the Adunheim Lancers may have is retreating back across that bridge is not likely to be terribly easy, but they are going to get in here. They're going to do some damage to the Rhudaur marksmen, which at this point is probably all Umbar can ask of their cavalry. Do a little bit more damage to the attackers as they move in. Adunheim Lancers are going to trudge their way back across. Let's see here. Victory, a distinct possibility for the Orc Archers, and that is because the Nazgul are here. The Nazgul make all the difference in a fight like this. Lorenan Swordmasters, even they are going to be no match for Nazgul. The Orc Archers can just be here to absorb a few sword blows. Any kill they pick up is going to be a bonus. There's a few javelins starting to trickle their way in now as well. Trying to hide behind the practice dummies here. But yeah, the Nazgul are an interesting wrinkle here because Mordor in general, you still have their Temple Executioners, they still have their Temple Guard somewhere. albeit the Temple Guard probably won't be able to get into a good position to truly utilise their ammunition, or whatever ammunition they have left. There's still some Brotherhood units from Khand. It is mostly Khand and Mordor, like Isengard. I think ultimately they were put through the ringer along with Rhudaur, a little bit more so, purely because of, you know, the aggressive elven defence they had to fight. In come the Rhudaur marksmen once again, getting a counter charge of sorts into the Adunheim Lancers. Again, Umbar just trying their best to try and do what damage they can with their cavalry. Although that is going to be incredibly limited. Back they go once again, the Adunheim Lancers. Set of crossbows just sort of waiting up on the cliffs. It is finely poised, this fight, because I mean the defenders have got everything they need. They've got some range support from the crossbows and the kindred. They've got all the pikes they could possibly want to defend this position, but do they have the numbers to withstand a consistent push? Orc archers now fighting alone, and like I said, they stand absolutely no chance whatsoever against the Lothlorien swordmasters. Those pikes really are congregating at this point. Nice roundhouse kick there from the elves. An elven staple, of course. The Snaga skirmishers are moving in as well, so once again you can see here the attackers are quite keen to just sort of throw their trash in first and try and wear the defenders down as much as they can, but as I always say, if you stand in trash with no quality whatsoever, you're asking for trouble, really. In come the Nazgul. The Lothlorien swordmasters are going to retreat in this narrow gap. I mean, it is a very narrow engagement. It's rare we get something like this, to be honest. Most of the engagements we see are quite sweeping. You can also see there's a whole bunch of Umbar pikes ready to just sort of hold the line, you would think, indefinitely as well. Again, the cavalry just continues to go back and forth, slowly but surely wearing down this one unit of Rhudaur marksmen, which might not seem like anything significant, but I mean, you know, every kill is going to count at this point. And we shall see. Trying to push through once again. And again, this is the issue, like, that is really the only way in, that one archway, which means if you fight slowly, I think you're playing into the defenders' hands because of the amount of pikes they've got. Slowly but surely, they will be able to wear you down. You just need to try and push in, I think. Slap these Minas Morgul Chosen into shield wall. Push them in with your trolls. Follow in with everything else you have. And just sort of push in here. That's the way. Because yeah, you'll get shot up by like rangers and crossbows and the like, but it's not really a choice you have. You don't have the luxury of choice at this point if you're the attackers. You just need to push in and try and use your brute numbers to try and win you the day. Harbingers of Castamere still in here as well. Because again, quality. The defenders still have quality. Lothlorien and Umbar both have units of quality. Lindon are pretty much gone at this point. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised they haven't done this already, to be honest with you. Clog up the bridge to try and make sure these lancers can't really gain any sort of ground. I'm also surprised, to be frank, they haven't just sent a unit of halberdiers over here to block this off. I mean, it's not as if the halberdiers are doing it. Well, I suppose actually I can see why they wouldn't. The crossbows would shoot them in the back, and that would be the end of a unit of halberdiers. Meanwhile, back come the Nazgul once again, and there is actually an opportunity. This is the opportunity. If I were the attackers, I would just say, we're going in. We're going in with everything. They won't have the opportunity to sort of shift their defence quickly enough, at least not to the extent where they can cover the whole thing. We can just pour in and try and use our numbers. If we lose, so be it. Because if you lose in that way, it means you don't have the quality or the numbers to be able to overcome this defence. Whereas if you just slowly let yourself get ground down by pikes, you're going to lose regardless. And I do hope the attackers don't fall into that particular pitfall. Corsair crossmen moving in. Trying to line up a shot on the Nazgul almost certainly. But so far, it's just the dregs of both armies sort of slowly grinding one another down. I have a feeling the actual decisive engagement isn't actually going to be all that long, to be honest with you. It's just sort of a matter of manoeuvring around and deciding when it's going to happen. Adunheim Lancers still maybe with a part to play. Charging into the rear. But even so, like a maximum push, all you need is one unit to stay behind. It could even be just a unit of Dunlending clansmen to make sure that the Lancers can't recharge you as you pass through the archways. So I still think a big push is the way to go. Having a look in, like the Isengard crossbows at this point are just slowly but surely wearing them down. Back come the Lothlorien swordmasters, so still none of these engagements particularly decisive, to be honest with you. Nazgul waiting. More weapon racks. And then comes a unit of half-orc Baneguard. Only 25 of them, but still that's a fight that the Lothlorien swordmasters should win, if we're being honest. Armour upgrade on the Baneguard or no, they do seem to have a few Uruk-hai plates on them, which suggests an upgrade, even if they're not really wearing any sort of trousers. D9 Lancers coming back. I mean, this was probably the worst place on the field they could have possibly come to. Engaging the champions of the White Hand, and I think this is, yeah, immediately they rout. The most devastating unit of anti-cavalry in the game, and the D9 Lancers wandered right into them. Unfortunate from an Umbar perspective, but I don't think the battle is going to be decided based on those units of cavalry anyway. Going to be very difficult to break the Mordor army as well, with these troll drummers being constantly present. Temple Executioners chanting. Victory seems certain for the Lothlorien swordmasters. Shouldn't be too surprising. Like, the Baneguard are not really ideally suited to fighting them because of their lower melee defense. The AP will help, but against an Elven unit of this quality, it's not going to be enough. What have we got here? Watchers of the Golden Wood. Are they going to fire? Do they have anything they can fire at that would be worthwhile? Not really. Everything's a little bit too close. They'd have to fire up and down. Like, you'd think that you could just fire right down, but that's not how Medieval 2 works. And they are going to fire at something. They're going to try and I think they were actually going after the Nazkai there, but I suppose they could be going after the Troll Drummers. No, they pulled out their blades now anyway, which may mean that their time as an archer unit is at its end. Still a few little units fighting in this like sort of gatehouse area. Belagire pikemen switching across to the other side. Still not an awful lot of decisive actions being taken. Let's go up to time 6 speed. I won't make a little cut here because here come the Nazkai. Because aha, here we go. Finally, we have entry. The Uruk-hai infantry are moving in, but they need to push in with more than this. Like, this is not going to be sufficient at all. Again, they need to gain some courage here, the attackers. Time and time again, we see the attackers throw away their ability to win the fight because they just don't have the balls to move in numbers, and I feel as though that's going to be what happens here as well. Time and time again, it happens, but I hope they're not. I mean, Orc Javelins and Dunlending Clansmen, they need units of quality in here. Yes, those units are going to be hit by ranged fire, but if you just send in units of basic... And like... At this point, the window of opportunity is somewhat closed, because now they've been able to get into position, they've seen them move in. Ugh, I don't know. The defenders might be onto a winner here. With this many pikes, with the quality that Lothlorien and Umbar still have available to them, if they can keep the attackers bottled up like this, they have all the tools they need to go on to win this fight. Can they see themselves over the line? That's the question. Victory seems certain for the Belagire pikemen. Watchers of the Golden Wood are still here, obviously fantastic in melee. Greater in number than the Kindred of Celeborn, as well as being two-handed swordsmen rather than dual wielders, which is just better in Medieval 2 and in reality as well. Corsair crossbowmen, not many of them actually firing, but each of those bolts that does find its mark will have a lasting impact. Still some Castamir's Rangers over there as well, albeit I don't know if they're in the best of positions to actually fire. Trying to shoot through the gap, I suppose. Kindred of Celeborn getting into melee. Oof. You want to be a little bit careful while the Rangers are firing. It would be heartbreaking indeed to crash at this late stage of the battle. Victory seems certain. Only a fool could lose this battle. Harbingers of Castamir and Kindred of Celeborn in melee, backing up the Belagire pikes, the banks of Belagire pikes that are on both sides. as the light rain continues to fall. But yeah, the attackers need to do something different here. Like, if they're just content to settle in for this kind of battle, they've already lost and they may as well admit defeat. But if they do push in with more, look at all of this, like, they're so slow, they're moving so slowly. They should have been ready to do this. Like, they had, in game time, it must have been at least 3/4 of an hour that they had to set up and consider their options, and they've managed to do it sloppily even in spite of that. And just for that alone, I think the defenders deserve the victory here, but we'll see if they have enough left to stop the sheer numbers that the attackers will be able to throw at them. I think personally they do. I think they should have the quality here on hand to be able to do this. Lothlorien spearmen moving in. Crossbows continuing to fire. Crossbows on both sides continuing to fire, doing some nasty, nasty damage indeed. Castamir's Rangers firing missiles. Yeah, a lot of these units are breaking because, again, they just don't have the quality, even with the troll drummers there, with the damage they're taking. They're surrounded on all sides, they're getting hit by crossbow bolts, by ranger fire. It's never going to work. This is pretty much the sum total of the infantry they have left, aside from the Watchers of the Goldenwood, the defenders. But it's a very nicely constructed front line. I mean, Umbar as well, I think perhaps seeing they need something in reserve are going to pull off their pikes just in case. I mean, what is the play here from the attackers? The attackers have been a little bit disappointing here in the late game, I have to say. I feel as though they lost their bottle, and they may end up losing the entire battle as a result of that. Like the announcers were saying, they had the advantage going into the late game. Yes, it's a single, very narrow choke point, but the defenders actually gave them the opportunity to pour in. And they didn't take it because they just didn't have the courage. And that may be what once again determines one of these battles. In come the Karos Galadhon's guys. And once again, there's a bit of a gap here. Like, if they poured in now, these pikes could end up buckling. Space could be found and then you could just sort of spread through. But once again, I think the attackers, they're just... The troll drummers have managed to get this far. Of course, they'll be butchered by Watchers of the Golden Wood, but very, very mysterious decision making here. All of these units still just sort of hanging out. Looks like they're trying to push in numbers now, but yeah. Khand and Mordor should have taken a leaf out of the Rhudaur Isengard book on the other side. When you see the opportunity, you push in with everything. Whereas Khand and Mordor over here initially being a little bit more cautious and thought out because of the way Umbar deployed was the right thing to do, but now dispense with that, all in. It doesn't look like they're going to take that lesson to heart though. Castamir's Rangers firing right through the choke point, getting lots of kills. So the fool that I was, I have zoomed in on Rangers when they were firing, and of course considering the amount of people that were pouring through, that was always going to be a recipe for disaster, especially on a cityscape map such as this, with all of its fences and so on and so forth. So, you know, lesson learned. It's one of the main reasons why whenever I see a map like this, with the amount of frames that it has, my heart always sinks a little bit. It's the sort of thing that should be one of the best things to see in Reforged, but with the reliability issues, it isn't anymore. It's the sort of thing that I somewhat dread to see, and obviously when it comes down to stuff like this, we have to get a view such as this, which is obviously going to be a little bit of a problem, but we can still see the black borders of the Umbar front line from up here, but I really can't zoom in. Not all the Castamir's Rangers are still firing. It's a recipe for disaster, and if it crashes again, I wouldn't have the heart to continue, and I at least want to see the game over screen from this. So it's unfortunate, but this is the state of play with Reforged at the moment. You know, these issues exist, and they're not likely to go away anytime soon, so they're just the sort of thing which I'm going to have to put up with, and it makes my content less, you know, there's a little bit less quality of my content as a result of all of this sort of thing, but there's nothing I can do about that, nothing that I can do. So, you know, if it's a problem for you, then feel free to sort of, you know, express your displeasure, but there's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. So here we are. We will see if this big push from the attackers will come to anything, but they're still not committing everything in, to be honest with you. You can see from up here the Nurads are now being pushed in. There's also the Reforged Javelins just in behind, but they're still not pushing in the Khandish elites, and they're still boxed up. And that's the problem. As long as they keep funneling in just their more basic units, like their Nurads, into the jaws of death over here, between the Umbarim and the Lothlorien elves, they're going to be in massive trouble. Umbar still have a decent amount of forces left to them. Lothlorien at this point are on their last legs, to be fair. The Karasgladhon's Guardians just have 33 manpower to their name. There's also the Watchers of the Golden Wood in there as well, but two very significant units, the two strongest Lothlorien units when it comes to melee. Let's see here. Rhudaur marksmen moving forward, obviously, they did get charged several times by the Adunime Lancers, albeit rather impotently, but then the Adunime Lancers were finished off by the champions of the White Hand. In fact, I think at this point, just to put an end to the torment, let's go up to times 6 speed, because there's really nothing else to be done in a single choke point fight like this. It has been a high quality battle, this, and it's unfortunate that it has to end this way, but like I said, there's not really an awful lot I can do about that. These things happen, and to be fair, this is the sort of thing that would happen anyway. Like, this isn't something to do with the maps or anything. This has been an issue ever since the Rangers were introduced, and it's just how the Rangers interact. I mean, the map probably didn't help matters. Ooh, get away from that. Get away from that, because the Rangers just got back into position. There was the danger of a crash once again. In come Khan, they're pushing in. In come the Harbingers of Castamere once again. And there we go. I might risk being... yeah, but they're dying off very quickly here, the Temple Executioners. So, yeah, I think it's fairly clear what way the wind is blowing in this battle. The Reforged Javelins moving in, they're a fairly substantial unit as well. But because of all the pikes, I feel as though the difference maker here was just the fact that the attackers refused to move in as aggressively as they needed to earlier. Now that most of their manpower is gone, now they're pushing everything in, but it's too late. It's too little too late. Still getting hit by Corsair crossbows. There goes the Khandish General at the hands of the Umbar pikeman. Where are those bloody Rangers? Oh, they're actually fighting in melee now, so I'm probably safe. I'm taking my life into my hands here by going down closer to the battle, but here we go. The Rangers are being engaged by some Temple Executioners, so hopefully we won't see the Rangers actually fire any more of their ammunition off. The bloody things. Karasgladhon's Guardians' victory seems certain. Sandwiched between two banks of pikes, the remainder of the Mordor and Khandish forces. Nurad Stormguard, a very strong unit, but they're not going to be enough to dig their allies out of this situation. The Temple Guard are going to kill off the remainder of the crossbow Corsairs. There goes the Umbar General at the hands of the champions. Champions of the White Hand are still in here, but the problem with the champions of the White Hand in this particular situation is, of course, the amount of pikes that are still alive. Very poor for champions of the White Hand to have to deal with. Trollshire axe throwers are still in here. 88 of them, but in close confines like this, I don't think they're going to be sufficient to deal enough damage. Either Karasgladhon's Guardians moving back up the hill to the Temple Guard, although I don't know. Temple Guard, I mean, you can't afford to just send up 4 pikemen to try and deal with Temple Guardsmen. Castamere's Rangers, still 16 of them. Please don't start firing your bows, as much as it would be the right thing to do from a game perspective, from a mechanical perspective, it would just be horrifying for me to behold. Nurad Stormguard are now routing, the Kindred of Celeborn are still in here. Still some Harbingers of Castamere, I say some, 21 is still a fairly substantial amount of manpower to have in that unit. Still champions of the White Hand, but they're going to have to try and go through the Harbingers here, which I just don't think is going to happen. The Trollshire axe throwers getting picked apart. The Trollshire axe throwers are going to try and leave the area, but at this point, like, there's some things which you just need to be less shameful about. Like, if this is your only unit that's remaining, you just need to accept the fact that you're going to lose the fight, I think, because it's not up to the defenders to chase you down with their pikemen. You're the attackers. If your attack has gone so poorly that you can't take the settlement without resorting to that sort of thing, then it is what it is. Naryn Iru Sentinels, defeat seems certain. Defeat seems certain for the Naryn Iru Sentinels. What are they fighting? There's still a few Reforged Javelins down there, I suppose, and there's still some Temple Guard. Castamere's Rangers still in there. These Balagaya pikes are just sort of stood there. I wonder why. Trollshire axe throwers still firing their payloads in. The Harbingers of Castamere need to retreat back inside, to be honest with you, and he also needs to reactivate these Balagaya pikemen. They're just sort of sat there doing nothing, and you can't afford to have 50 soldiers doing nothing in a situation such as this. Harbingers of Castamere, still 13 of them remaining, which should be enough to polish off these remaining Reforged Javelins. The Temple Guard as well, only 13 of them left, and there's still too many Kindred of Celeborn, just in terms of sheer elites. 5 champions of the White Hand. Still some Snaga skirmishers out here as well, albeit they're very scattered at this point. in come the Troll Shores. They're going to try and get in position to throw any remaining axes they have, I'm sure, but if the defenders are paying attention, that eventuality shouldn't come to pass. Customer's Rangers, only 10 of them remaining. 12 Temple Guardsmen. Slowly but surely this battle is going to reach its conclusion. There's a few T-posing Castamir's Rangers stuck in the floor there. Balagai Pikemen are broken and fighting to the death, and those axe throwers, I have to say, it may come down to MSQ2 just not paying attention there, because he could have disengaged his Harbingers of Castamir and charged them into the axe throwers, and they would have died very easily. As it is, it looks like the attackers might actually go on to win this because of a lack of battlefield awareness, which, considering the stuff that MSQ2 has actually gotten away with in the past couple of battles, like risky manoeuvres that shouldn't have pulled off, maybe this is a bit of karma coming back now. Because those Troll Shore axe throwers, they're going to have what it takes, I think, to finish this battle off. In fact, yeah, Temple Guard, they're going to win the attackers. I wish I could be more enthusiastic about this battle, because it has been really, really good, but again, technical issues have soiled it. Again. It's so exasperating, and it's one of the main reasons why I desperately, desperately want a new game that I can add into the Medieval 2 stuff I do, because this is not going to go away as a problem. This is going to be here forever now, I think. For as long as I do Reforged content, there's going to be these issues. I have no faith, really, that these things are going to go away, because they're baked into what is part of Reforged now, with regards to some of the unit types like Rangers and, you know, some of the maps as well. And that's nothing against the devs, that's just how it is. And it's my problem that I need to try and reconcile, but what am I supposed to do? Castamir's Rangers, let's get this over with. It's going to be it. It's going to be the Rhudaur General who's going to finish things off here. The officer for the Ranger unit finished off by the Rhudaur General. Very, very nice. The defenders were, they had the percentage advantage right up until the end there, but in the end they did manage to go through. To be fair to Unknown Soldier as well, it's just because I'm in a bit of a crabby mood after the crash. He did exactly the right thing with the Troll Shore axe throws. He shouldn't have just charged them in like I suggested. That was just me being salty that I'm continuing to get these reliability problems. But again, this isn't really anything to do with the map. That was just the zooming in point blank on the Rangers when they were doing their thing. But yeah, I think the attackers, to be fair, I think they handled themselves pretty well. I mean, in spite of the fact that Rhun ultimately got dumpstered, they still managed to pick up a decent amount of kills, more than Mordor and Khand managed to do, which is quite telling, I think, because Umbar had the biggest army, and yet Mordor and Khand, who were facing off against them, got the fewest kills on their team, which is interesting. Not that they did anything wrong per se. I think there was a couple of things they could have polished up. But yeah, in the end, I don't think too much of... I don't think that's too... You can't lay that too much at their own feet. Isengard and Rhudaur, I think, were ultimately the players that won the battle for their team. I think, Rhudaur especially pushing up the hill aggressively into the Lothlorien defence, using their skirmishers, their powerful skirmishers to their advantage. Isengard being sort of the foil to the Rhudaur army all the while. I do think ultimately the attackers do kind of deserve this victory in a way because of that. Like, time and time again, I sort of say how a lack of aggression throughout the battle is the reason why the attackers go on to lose a fight like this, and often it is. But in the end, early on they were. I do think later on they were a little bit too passive when passing through that choke point, and I do think that they could have been more aggressive and they could have won this fight more convincingly had they just poured in, sort of grabbed hold of their courage and just sort of gone in like that. But as it is, you can't complain too much when ultimately you do win, but it was very fine margins indeed. Meanwhile, let's see what did the damage for Lindon. Lindon's army actually did most of its business very early on, stopping Rhun and then helping Lothlorien against Isengard and Rhudaur. They didn't really have a part to play in the late game as such. 559 kills on the Rangers, that's not too surprising. A lot of the higher end units of infantry did decently. The Marines also getting over 200 kills, which is good. Obviously they throw their Marines and then they're decent in melee, which is probably why they got kills to the extent that they did. And the cavalry also did pretty well as well. The Horse Swords of Ulmo at any rate with over 400 kills, which obviously they did add up, but in the end not quite enough to give the defenders the victory. yeah, I mean, as it was, like, again, this battle is tinged with that crash a little bit, because again, like, when a crash happens, especially that far into a 60,000 frame battle, my enthusiasm just evaporates. But don't let that fool you. This battle was of incredibly high quality, very, very close, and yeah, I mean, it's good to see that these battles are taking place, because I really enjoy seeing battles on newer maps like this. So obviously someone's put a lot of work into this map. This match was also very, very effective as it was. So yeah, I mean, I have to say, big thank you to Tommy Wiseau, and I think Captain Gervais, who also sent me this battle replay. At least someone else did send me this battle replay, but again, it was first come first served really, and it was just the first player who sent it to me, from whose perspective we saw it. But yeah, it doesn't really matter too much, obviously. But yeah, big thanks to all the players involved. Big thank you to Tommy and Captain Gervais, as I said. Next battle, I think we'll probably scale down a little bit, just because I want to have something that isn't like a monster battle like this, that, you know, I'm constantly worried about the game crashing because of ranges or fences. I've been given quite a good 2v2, I think, on a new map as well, so at the very least we'll be able to showcase a new map, and I think that will be the next one I do. Like I said, there's always sort of, coming up in the future, I always want to sort of branch out into something new for the reasons that I've gone through in this game, but also for the health of my channel. Like I said, I keep saying that, it's just a matter of when I'm able to do this. Again, like, I'm sort of kicking the can down the road to a certain extent, but that will happen eventually. But the next thing will probably just be another Reforged replay, if I'm being honest. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.